OK, let's get to it then. The title race dominates a lot of the back pages in the Sunday papers. The Sun on Sunday, thirsty work is the headline after Arsenal's victory over Brighton at the Emirates. John, it is a win, albeit a cagey one. Are they convincing you more or not so much that they're going to end that 22-year wait?
Cagey or nervy, Dharmesh? I would say nervy, probably. I do like that back page because it sort of kind of focuses on Martin Odegaard there, who opened up the scoring, didn't he, with that wonderful goal. And I do think Odegaard, I think, is a terrific captain, really respected by his peers and teammates, and the sort of leader for Arteta on the pitch. So I think it was good that he gets his form. But Arsenal missing a few players. 2-0, they're cruising, and you think, oh, this is a good response to earlier in the day. Man City, obviously, a really impressive, hard-fought, ground-out win at sort of Nottingham Forest. And Arsenal have to respond. And you think, wow, OK, they're in the zone here, they're going to do it, and they're going to do it comfortably. And at 2-0, they were putting on the pressure for 3-0, and then suddenly they concede. And then all of a sudden you're feeling the nerves and the tension amongst Arsenal fans. I'm sure you could feel it within the ground. That's what it feels like at the moment. And they've gone from a place, I think, in sort of October, November, when they were winning games for fun and playing ever so well and free-flowing football and relaxing, to a place when they really needed one of the best saves you'll see this season, if not the best, from David Raya to tip it over to maintain that 2-1 scoreline at the end. Because, wow, I mean, the Sunday Express even lead on the save, a ray of hope. And it really was that good. I mean, it was a remarkable save. But it does talk to some nerves in the Arsenal camp, and they are leaders, and they've got a massive game on Tuesday against Aston Villa. And it just feels as if, yeah, they're feeling the pressure, I think, much more than Man City have been there, done it, got the T-shirt. Aston Villa, who seem to be just enjoying the ride, if you like. And Arsenal, the fan expectation, the expectations in the ground, huge summer spending spree, who's, really sort of kind of taking the limelight out of those new signings. There's so much pressure and expectation on Arteta this year to win a trophy. I think he's done a great job at Arsenal overall, but he is expected to win a major trophy this year. All those things coming together, I think, is playing into that feeling of nerves.
Jason, John mentioned it there, the anxiety, the nervousness, the caginess almost. The Sunday Telegraph, they focus on that.
Arteta of the crowd.
Well, exactly. Emirates awash with anxiety, but Arsenal maintain top spot. Sam Dean, who was at the Emirates Stadium, says in recent weeks, the Emirates Stadium has become one of the most anxious arenas in European football. Arsenal are top of the Premier League and the Champions League, into the semi-finals of the Carabao Cup, but it feels like every home match is a source of maximum stress for the club supporters and the players. Mikel Arteta says it's because of a willingness to win, but is there a fine line between willingness and desperation?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think the desperation is winning at the moment. I think it doesn't take an awful lot for that atmosphere to emerge at the Emirates. I think it even goes back to the dog days of Arsene Wenger. That there was that kind of frustration that took over at times. Obviously, Arteta's moved that on quite a lot. There's much more unity around the ground. But I think that unity has become almost, as you say, that desperation to finally get over the line. This is a team that I think, once they do win the league, can probably go on and be a very dominant team for quite some time, notwithstanding what obviously Manchester City and Liverpool and others can do. I think the talent is there, the strength is there. I agree with John. I do like Mikel Arteta, although I do think at times he does need to calm down. On the touchline, I just think he transmits an awful lot of anxiety to the players, and you can see it at the Emirates. He is very, very engaged with what's going on the pitch, but sometimes it's a bit too much. And I think those moments come sometimes too early in games. It's almost like very early on, they're almost like stressful and trying to score a goal very quickly and trying to get. And then after that, it's almost like, right, we scored, now we can't concede, we can't lose. And I think they've got, and obviously it's part of being a maturing team and winning something. And as John says, I completely agree, he has to win a major trophy this year. And I say, once they get over the line, if they get over the line, it will make a huge difference to them. It will be transformative to Arsenal once they win a major trophy again. I think it will be transformative. But it's that anxiety and that desperation, as you talk about, that can they do it? And I have to admit, I do slightly fear for them. I fear that it's been so good in some ways up until this point, top of the Champions League table as well. But still haven't won anything yet, so it's a long way to go. And I would worry a lot if I was at Manchester City because they're looking really strong.
You know, maybe Arsenal are having their bad patch right now and they're still winning because, let's be honest, the Wolves game was really bad, but they won it. Last week at Everton, I was at Everton and they weren't convincing, but they won. Yesterday, they weren't great, but they won. So we all remember, what was it, 4 or 5 weeks ago that they beat Tottenham to 6 points clear. And everyone's saying, Arsenal running away with it. This is the bad patch, and they're still top of the league. So perhaps this is a positive, that the weather in the storm. And I know they've got a tough January coming up. They've got Villa on Tuesday, like you say. If they win that game, then all of a sudden that's a big
It's
moment.
one of two things, isn't it? It's either that, and I agree with Mark, it could well be that, because every team has a wobble, don't they, during the season. You can't just seamlessly go on and win every single game. But at the start of the season, we're talking about Liverpool in a similar way, weren't we? When they were winning all those games, we're thinking, Liverpool just getting over the line, and then it suddenly fell away. So it could go that way as well.
Different narrative of Liverpool, it was almost like they've won the title, so they're winning 5 on the bounce, and even though they weren't playing well, it's because Liverpool, that's what they do. With Arsenal, it's like, this is what Arsenal do, they're wobbling. But beat Villa, right, that's a tough call because Villa are on a great run at the moment. But I mean, I do think that Arsenal have got a tough January, especially at home. They've got Villa this week, then they've got Liverpool, then they've got Man United. So the next 3 home games are really big. But come through January, if you're still unbeaten at home, then all of a sudden, maybe this was the wobble and maybe they're kind of showing the kind of the bottle right now. So I still think Arsenal are the best squad in the league. Yeah. And I think we've kind of put a little bit too much emphasis on Man City because it's Pep. If they lose Erling Haaland, then Man City are a different team completely. So I just think if you're an Arsenal fan, just calm down, stay calm, and it might just turn itself out in a positive way.
John, in your paper, Neil McClellan, who's at the Emirates, says the good news for Arsenal fans is that the Gunners held off a late Brighton fight back to return to the top of the table. The bad news is that there's potentially another 5 months of this nerve-jangling anxiety to go this season. Now, Jason mentioned about Mikel Arteta and his demeanour, and maybe that's adding to the anxiety. I don't know what you think, but whenever I've been at his news conferences, you're there every week like I am, I've noticed something different with Mikel Arteta this time, and he seems to be a little bit more relaxed. Maybe at odds to what Jason is saying.
Before John says that, sorry, I agree with him. Press conferences, I'm talking about on the touchline. That's what I'm talking about. Sorry, go on.
I was going to agree with you. I think his general demeanour has changed. Yeah. And I also think he has improved. We're starting from a low base here, in terms of behavioural standards, terms. But I do actually think then that he has, there's no doubt about it, when you are too anxious, when you are too het up, when you are screaming and, being too overzealous on that touchline, it resonates to players. It really does.
Jurgen Klopp did it at Liverpool.
They embraced it, didn't they?
Exactly.
And Jurgen Klopp was a brilliant manager for Liverpool. But I think with Mikel Arteta,
You think it works for Arsenal?
I think it makes them nervous. But I must say, I think the point I was going to make, stop boys, basically, is that I actually think he's dramatically improved that. Whether you like that or not, I still think he's over anxious on the touchline. But from where he's come from, I think it's one of his big improvements as a manager.
No, I agree with that.
This season, and I tell you where that's borne out, is borne out in their disciplinary record, which is yellow cards is sort of kind of a little bit mid-table, but they haven't had a sending off. Well, last season, injuries and sendings off, you could argue, completely undermined their title challenge. Well, they haven't had one this season. I think that's testament to Arteta's improvement, and I do actually think that's perhaps a little bit underestimated and undervalued. I still think he could calm down a bit, but if he calms down, do you lose Arteta's passion, enthusiasm and the drive and the coach that he is? Honestly, over the course of the piece, basically, over the 6 years, he's done a remarkable job. But I do think ultimately he will, and he knows this, he'll be judged on what he wins and judged on what he achieves as a manager, and that's got to be trophies. But I do think Mark's right. They're basically top of the Premier League, top of the Champions League. But the nerves. If last season it was injuries, we've got a bit of injuries this season. If this season they don't win it, I think it'll be down to nerves and tension.
Mark, just picking up on what you said, maybe this is Arsenal's sticky patch. Riyadh Al-Samurai in the Mail on Sunday says if Arsenal are to finally hold their nerve in the title race, then Mikel Arteta ought to spend the entirety of next summer writing notes of thanks to those who helped them through these festive weeks. Own goals are the gifts that keep on giving. If you look at their last 4 games in all competitions, the 2-1 victory against Wolves, 2 own goals. It was a penalty that separated them from Everton. There was an own goal, albeit in the Carabao Cup, against Crystal Palace. And the decisive goal, what ended up being the decisive goal against Brighton, was an own goal as well. What should we read into that, if anything?
Well, I think what we read into that is the fact that they're still getting results. You know, every team has most teams in normal title-winning seasons have a wobble. They have a difficult period. And I think this is Arsenal's now. And I think, had it gone the other way, had they lost those games or drawn those games, then we could say that the nerves are being afray. But I just think it's easy with Arsenal because I think we've all been to the Emirates and it can be an edgy stadium. The fans, they're very quick to, not turn, but they're very quick to get anxious. So it's an easy narrative to play into it that Arsenal fans are nervous, it's going to cost them a title. I don't know. I just think that it shows a character that they've got that they can get over the line of these games. And you talk about Arteta's, I won't say antics on the touchline, but I think what it is with Arteta, I think he knows that he still hasn't got a player on the pitch who can do that for him. So, you know, you go back to the classic captains, you know, the Roy Keanes at Man United, even, you know, Van Dijk at Liverpool. The manager can stand back and know that he's got a guy on the pitch who can do all that kind of ranting and raving and organise on the pitch. I still think Arsenal are quite naive sometimes on the pitch, quite young. I mean, they're not the youngest team, but they have a bit of inexperience. They haven't got like a Kevin De Bruyne that Man City had that could just guide them through games. I think that's Declan Rice's potential role. Maybe Martin Odegaard as captain, but they're still not quite there yet. So I think Arteta has to kind of almost micromanage from the touchline because he needs someone on the pitch to do it for him. So I think everyone at Arsenal needs to calm down a bit.
John,
it's still going well.
John, we're talking about these own goals, and I guess it's shining a light on Arsenal's attacking players, and in particular, the man we've spoken about throughout this season in Viktor Gyökeres. Not just his performance yesterday, but just generally, when everybody is fit, because you know Kai Havertz is coming back, Gabriel Jesus has just returned, Mikel Merino's played a role up front as well. When everybody is fit, is he the guy for you that's going to spearhead Arsenal's title challenge for the rest of the season?
No, I don't think he can do it. I honestly, I worry about him a bit, and I think that he, in fairness to him, £64 million, and basically, you know, there's a lot of Arsenal fans saying, well, he does a great job for the team and he works hard. My word, you expect a bit more from that. If you really go all in, as Arsenal did, for a striker, you expect goals too, and he's just not scoring enough. He's not contributing enough to the game. Look at his few number of touches that, again, he was barely involved yesterday, and he's really struggling, I think. In fairness to him, before he got injured at Burnley, and at that point I thought, here we go, he's scoring, and he scored at Burnley, and he was leading the charge, he was leading the press, and we think, okay, this is what it's going to be about. He was a kind of a real sort of kind of bull in the china shop, really working hard and sort of leading the press, and basically also scoring and then contributing to the team. And since he's come back from Burnley, bearing in mind he didn't have a pre-season, in fairness to him, there's a few sort of kind of strikers obviously struggling from that aspect this season. But I worry about him, and I think Arteta's kind of caught in this place where he's putting him in because he could see that he was realising his potential and is sticking with him to kind of get him that opportunity to get back to where he was and where he was threatening to be. But I actually think at the same time it's a mistake because Gabriel Jesus comes on, looks much better, he looks sharp, he looks quick, he looks, you know, very skillful, his touch. And I think Kai Havertz will still be, when fit again, will be Arteta's first choice number 9. I really do. I don't think it's worked for Gyökeres yet. And I think of all the big signings and the statement signings in the summer, that's the one under the microscope. It's always going to be like that with the centre forward. Has he got potential to turn it around? I think so. But I look at him at times and he just looks sluggish and slow. I don't think he is. But when you're struggling like that form-wise, my word, you look at it on the pitch.
Jason, doesn't seem to be the same issues if you're Manchester City, because the goals now, whereas before we were talking about an over-reliance on Erling Haaland, they are finding 3 other players who are really contributing in Tierney Reinders. As the Observer says, Reinders arrives late to deliver Christmas gifts to Jubilant City, and of course Phil Foden. But most of all,
right then, Gooners, let's be honest for a second. This whole narrative about Arsenal nerves is starting to get really lazy. Yes, but it wasn't perfect. Yes, it was tense. Yes, the Emirates was nervous. But here's the part everyone keeps ignoring. We keep winning. This is being framed like a crisis, like Arsenal are hanging on by a thread, when in reality, this is exactly what title-winning teams do during tough patches. You don't always play champagne football in December and January. You survive, you grind, you find a way. People say, oh, it's nervy. Well, guess what? It's meant to be nervy. This isn't mid-table comfort football anymore. This is a title race. And pressure doesn't mean weakness. Pressure means something is actually on the line. And let's talk about that anxiety at the Emirates. That isn't fear. That's belief mixed with expectation. For years, Arsenal fans didn't expect anything. Now we do. That's the difference. That tension comes from knowing this team is good enough and desperately wanting them to finally cross the line. As for Arteta, people saying he transmits anxiety from the touchline, I don't fully buy it. What I see is a manager who cares, who is obsessed with control, and who understands that right now every detail matters. And by the way, look at the discipline this season. No red cards, more control, more maturity. That's growth. Now let's address the elephant in the room. Viktor Gyökeres. This is where I do think the criticism has some weight. Because when you spend that kind of money on a striker, working hard isn't enough. Pressing isn't enough. You need goals, and right now they're not coming often enough. You can see it. His confidence looks off, his touches are limited. And when Jesus comes on, the tempo changes instantly. For me, when everyone is fit, Havertz is still Arteta's first choice 9, and Jesus, when sharp, offers more unpredictability. That doesn't mean Gyökeres is a flop, but it does mean the pressure is real and deserved. Still, let's zoom out. Top of the league, still winning during a bad spell, surviving without flowing football. That's not collapse, that's character. The real test is coming now. Villa, Liverpool, United. If Arsenal come through this run still standing, then this nervy Arsenal narrative flips completely. Because maybe, just maybe, this isn't Arsenal wobbling. Maybe this is Arsenal learning how to win ugly. And that, Gooners, might be the most dangerous version of Arsenal yet. So let me ask you this, Gooners. After watching that performance and hearing all this talk about nerves, pressure and mentality, what did you actually think? Did you see a team cracking under pressure? Or a team learning how to win when it's not pretty? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Were you calm, nervous, or quietly confident? And most importantly, who stood out for you on the night? Let's hear it.